funny. So Shabbat Shalom. For those of you who are putting on talit and have not yet done so, we welcome all of you who are here in person in the sanctuary at Emmanuel and Mount Laurel, and those who are able to join us through the blessing of technology as we turn in our prayer books for putting on the talit to page 289. 289. Bless Adonai, O my soul, Adonai, my God, how great you are. You are robed in glory and majesty, wrapping yourself in light as in a garment, spreading forth the heavens like a curtain. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehitatei patzis. I am going to try to see. I saw her, I think, oh, here comes her. I'm trying to get the live feed here. I see it. Yeah. Shabbat Shalom. See if I have a notification on my phone that Addis is now live. Sometimes it comes up and sometimes it doesn't. My goal is to try to be more interactive on Saturday mornings, and then maybe we'll be more interactive on Friday nights. It's hard to juggle all the tech and lead the service at the same time. So I'm trying to engage with those who aren't able to be here in person. Although you might be here, but I'm not seeing the video pop up, so I can't. I am live. Okay. Great. Create live, but I don't want to do that already. Shabbat Shalom, welcome. Okay. Oh, maybe I'll do that. Okay. Got it. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for your patience while I'm trying to make sure I can tune in those who are watching from afar as well as those in person. So we are going to turn in our Siddur, in our prayer book, to page 288. That's 288 in the brackets. Modani lefanecha melechai v'kayam tehechezarta v'nishmati bechem la rabba emunatecha As we turn now to page 287, page 287, I just want to get the microphone. Sure.
It is not we alone who pray, all things pray. All things pour forth their souls. The heavens pray, the earth prays, every creature, every living thing prays. In all life there is longing. Creation itself is but a longing, a prayer to the Almighty. What are the clouds, the rising and the setting of the sun, the soft radiance of the moon, and the gentleness of the night? What are the flashes of the human mind and the storms of the human heart? They are all prayers, the outpouring of boundless longings for God.
As we turn now to page 292, page 292. If Larry, you would lead us, are you? Oh, you might have a weekday festival version. Page 292 in the bracket.
The soul that you have given me, O God, is pure. You created it and formed it, breathed it into me, and within me you sustain it. So long as I have breath, therefore, I will give thanks to you, my God, and the God of all ages, source of all being, loving guide of every human spirit.
Baruch atah Adonai, asher biado nefesh kol chai, beruach kol besar ish. And before we turn to our Nisim B'chol Yom, our miracles of every day, we welcome to share with one another those daily miracles or those good things that have happened in our lives since we've been here last. And if you're watching through the blessing of technology and want to add something to the chat, feel free to do so at this time. You want to pass the mic?
I'm sure we were all praying for her. Thank God he's doing beautifully. But from a personal point of view, I was driving on the turnpike the other day, and there was a gentleman with a yellow coat on starting to walk across the turnpike. So I swerved. Thank God there was not a car. And I went over a piece of metal that he was going to retrieve. And the only damage was 2 tires slit right through. But no big deal. 4 new tires. It's not going to change my life. But we are safe, and I didn't hit that gentleman. And let me tell you, it was a miracle that I thought, oh, thank you, God, I'm still having my ability to see it and to make that swerve. He was a turnpike authority man, and he was going across to pick up this piece of debris. So I'm here, and Al's home resting, and that is a miracle because we really all could have been hurt, or I could have injured that man. So I thank God.
There's a blessing for that in Judaism. It's called Birkat HaGomel. We say that blessing when we have escaped, a misfortune like an accident, or some people do it after surgery. We offered that Birkat HaGomel not too long ago. And so if you feel comfortable, we can offer that blessing the time we say it is during our Torah reading.
I might not have said the right blessing, but
No, I'm just saying, we even
Yeah.
have made room for that. I'm sure you said the right blessing.
You have no idea how I was talking to God after that. I didn't hurt the man was my biggest concern. So thank you, God.
Other blessings, here, Harriet, we have a back? Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so my son is attending a leadership conference, so the National Guard let him attend that. So he normally would go to do his duty this weekend, but so he's at the College of New Jersey. And the other good thing was my father-in-law had one of these stress tests, you know, like with an MRI, you know, or a PET scan rather. And so they said, well, you know, we better check him out. So I took him to get his cardiac cath, and they decided that he didn't need a stent, and they treated him with medicine. So that's a good thing, right? I hope. And that's my news.
Very good.
Well, actually, I do have something. We just got back from our vacation with our 3 kids that are in college. We were able to get some time to get all of them together, and it was beautiful, and it doesn't happen very often, as everyone knows, getting the whole family together. So we were 6 days in a nice warm area, and we just got back last night, so we were blessed to be able to do that.
And health.
American Airlines.
We have one up here. Al?
I'd just like to make note that this is the first Shabbos of the new year, and we have a wonderful group here that's all back, and all meaning Audrey is now back with us. It's been a long time since she's been here, and it's wonderful to see her.
Amen. So we continue. I'm sorry I'm not able, I got the YouTube, but I didn't. Oh, wait, we have one more? Oh, wait, yes. Okay, let's pass it. Oh, B'Shah Tovah, granddaughter getting married. So we join together in our Nisim B'chol Yom on page 293. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasech bina lahavkin ben yom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokev kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Amechin mitzadei gaber. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Malti sharumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hanotein le'ya'ev koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hama'avir sheina meinai Utnuma me'apapai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shasani b'tselem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shasani b'chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And if someone could read then on page 298, page 298. We don't have an order for whoever has the mic.
These are things that are myths, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world. While the principle remains in the world to come, they are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in decent compassion, arriving early for study morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all.
As we turn now to page 302, page 302. Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, tov lehodo le'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, tov lehodo le'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Lehagid b'boker chasecha, ve'emunatecha b'leilot, alei asor v'aleina, ve'alei higayon b'chino. Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, tov lehodo le'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. And on page 303, we continue with Ashrei. Ashrei yoshvei beitecha, od yehalalu kasela. Ashrei ha'am shekacha lo, Ashrei ha'am shadonai Elohim. Tila leDavid, aromimcha Elohai hamelech, vavarcha shimcha leolam va'ed. L'chol yom avarchecha, ve'alela shimcha leolam va'ed. Gadol Adonai u'hulam me'od, v'ligdulato ein heker. For l'dor yishabach ma'asecha, u'kurotecha yagi. Adar kavod hodecha, v'divrei niflotecha asicha, ve'ezuz norotecha yomeru, u'tulata asafrena. Zecher rabtucha yabiu, v'tzidkacha yiranenu. Hanun barachum Adonai, erech apayim ugdol chesed. Tov Adonai lakol, v'rachamav al kol ma'asav. Yoduch Adonai kol ma'asecha, v'chasidecha yivarchucha. Kevod malchutka yomeru, u'kuracha yidaberu. Odia lifnei Adam gevurotav, kevod hadar malchuto. Malchutcha malchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'dor. Somech Adonai l'kol hanoflim, zokef l'kol hakufim. Einei chol elecha yisaberu, v'atanoten lehem et ochlam be'ito. Poteach et yadecha, matzvia l'kol chai ratzon. Tzadik Adonai b'chol drachav, v'chasid b'chol ma'asav. Tov Adonai l'kol korav, l'chol asher yikra'uhu be'emet. רצון יראיו יעשה, ואת שבתם ישמע ויושיעם. שומר אדוני את כל אוהביו, ואת כל הרשעים ישפיל. תהילת אדוני ידבר פיו, ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד. ואנחנו נברך יה, מעתה ועד עולם. Hallelujah. We continue on page 308 at the bottom, continuing to the top of page 309.
Even if our mouths were full of song as the sea, and our tongues full of joy in countless waves, and our lips full of praise as wide as the sky's expanse, and were our eyes to give off light like sun and moon, if our hands were spread out like the heaven's eagles, and our feet swift like the young deer, we could never thank you adequately, Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, or bless your name for 1/7 of the many thousands or tens of thousands, the countless times that you granted good things to our ancestors and to us.
As we continue on page 312, Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, Yalma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon, u'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala, uv'izman karib, v'meru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach, ve'olam olam me'amaya, yitbarach, v'yishtabach, yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitalev, v'yitalal, shemei dekudesha b'richu, leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiram b'yalma, v'meru, amen. As we're able, we rise to our ya la 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 ya la 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 la, ya la 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 ya la 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 la, ya la 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 ya la la la, ya la 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 ya la 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 la, ya la 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 ya la 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 la, ya la 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 ya la 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 la. Baruchu et Adonai, Amivorach, Baruch Adonai, Amivorach, Amivorach, Leolam va'ed, Amivorach, Amivorach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, yotzer or uvorei choshech, oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. Hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha barachamim, uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, ulam b'chokma asita, mala ha'aretz kinyanecha, tifarach Adonai Eloheinu, al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, va'al me'orei or sha'asita yifa'arucha selah. Or chadash al Zion ta'ir v'nizkeh, ulanu mehera leoro, Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer HaMe'orot. As we we turn now to page 308. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. May be seated. Before we go into the Hafta, just want to teach you something about the Shema. We look at it, we see that first line of Shema is very large, and the second one is smaller, which is about the size of all the others. So the Shema is big. Sometimes you may have heard the Shema prayed in such a way that the Shema is loud, that line, and the Baruch Shem is almost whispered. There's a midrash about why that comes from this week's Torah portion. So our Torah portion is Vayechi, and Jacob is on his deathbed. And so we know that another name for Jacob is Yisrael. So he says to his sons, Shema Yisrael, and his children, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. He's teaching them the concept that we have one God. And they repeat back, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. But then after Jacob has said that, his energy has waned. And so it's that it's Jacob's message to his children. His children affirm it in a kol ram, as we say, aloud, but then balachash, in a whisper, is able to get out. And that's one of the midrash which explains why we do the first line loudly and the second line. As we can. Oh, that's a Devar Acher. That's another Devar Torah. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadivarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom alevavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibartam v'shivtecha v'veitecha uv'lektecha v'derech u'shofecha u'chumecha u'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha u'ktabtam al mezuzot beitecha u'bisharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelohim ani Adonai Elohechem. We continue on page 321. Page 321, we have someone to read. No, it's not.
Thank you. Sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generation to come. The song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more. The song of a world redeemed, the song of peace.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nehedar b'kodesh, norat tehilot osei feleh, norat tehilot osei feleh. Shira chadasha shibechu gehulim, l'shimcha Kadosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael. On page 323, as we're able, we rise for tefillah. Adonai sipatai tiftachu fiyah ki tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevi Geula Lifnei B'neihem, Leman Shemo B'Yahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham, V'Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol Atah Rav Le'Hoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chayim B'Chesed, Mechayeh HaKol B'Rachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofech Cholim, U'Matir Asurim, U'Mekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot, U'Mido Melach, Melech Memit, U'Mechayeh, U'Matzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lahachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol. Nikadesh et shimcha ba'olam, Keshem shemakdishim oto bishmei marom, Kakatuv al yad neviecha, V'kara ze el ze ve'amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tsevaot, Melocho haaretz, Kivodo, Adir, Adirenu, Adonai, Adonenu, Madir, Shimcha b'chol haaretz, Baruch Kivod Adonai, Mimkomo, Echad hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu, V'hu Yashmienu, V'rachamav le'nei kochai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Yitzion, Ledor vador, Hallelujah. Ledor vador nagid god lecha, Ulenetzach netzachim kedushatcha naktish, V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. Yismechu v'malechutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat V'korei Oneg Shabbat. Mekadeshei, Mekadeshei Shavi Shabbat. Kulam yisfeu v'yitangu mituvecha Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat V'korei Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat V'korei Oneg Shabbat. V'hashvi ratzita bo v'kidashto Shabbat. Chemda diyamim oto karata Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat V'korei Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat V'korei Oneg Shabbat. Zecher lema'aseh v'reishit Shabbat. Zecher lema'aseh v'reishit Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat V'korei Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat V'korei Oneg Shabbat. We could have a reader lead us on page 330.
On this Shabbat day, as you generously receive our prayers, help us to hear your call. Grant us enough health to fulfill our duties and the compassion we need to attend to others. Teach us humility that we may perceive our own faults, and give us the wisdom to be forgiving of others. Give us the courage to be true to our higher selves and the charity to see the best in those around us. Give us patience enough not to become discouraged, hope enough to overcome all fears for the future, and faith enough to know your presence. O source of blessing, look with favor upon us. May our offerings be acceptable to you. We praise you, Adonai, whom alone we serve in reverence.
Baruch
Baruch
atah
atah
Adonai, she'otecha levatcha b'yirat na'avod. On page 332, if someone could lead us in this ministry. Audrey, you want to pass the microphone to someone? 332 at the bottom.
O God, may we never become complacent, faltering in our effort to build a world of peace. Let the nations know and understand that justice and right are better than dominion and conquest. May all come to see that it is not by might nor by power, but by your Spirit that life prevails.
Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Shalom Tova Ula. We continue our prayer now silently, whether we are led by the words on the pages of our Siddur through page 337 or other prayers throughout the prayer book, for those meditations and thoughts in our hearts. Shalom bimroma, uyaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimroma, uyaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. As we turn now in our Siddur to page 364, page 364 in the brackets, we continue with Seder Kriyat Torah, for the reading of the Torah, and as we are able, we rise. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, udevar Adonai mirushalayim, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, le'amo Yisrael, b'kedushato, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo, Gadol Adonai iti, Uniromema Shemo Yachdav. Adonai Hagevu, V'Hagevu, V'Hatiferet, V'Hanetzach, V'Hahod, Ki Chol Bashamayim Ubarech, Ki Chol Bashamayim Ubarech, Lecha Adonai HaMamlacha, V'Amid Naseh Lechol Erosh. Al Shosha Devarim, Al Shosha Devarim, Al Shosha Devarim, Haolam, Haolam Omeid. Al Shosha Devarim, Al Shosha Devarim, Al Shosha Devarim, Ha'olam Homemade. Our Torah portion for this Shabbat is Vayechi. Vayechi being the last Torah portion of the book of Genesis. I am going to be reading the section right where Jacob dies, and you can follow along. It's Genesis chapter 49, verse 33 and following. And if you are in your Plout commentary, the Torah commentary, it's going to be on page 314, 314, chapter 49, verse 33. Is there someone who would like the honor of the Aliyah today? Bruce, come on up. I'm looking for the, okay. Your Hebrew name?
Beryl Yisrael Ben Zalman.
Na la'amod ber Yisrael ben Zalman levarech al haTorah. Starting.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Amvarach le'olam v'hed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam v'hed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher b'chabana mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Vayichal Yaakov litzavot et banav, vaye'esof raglav el hamita, vayigva vayasef el amav. Vayipol Yosef al penei aviv, vayefk alav, vayashok lo. Vayitzav Yosef et avadav et harofim lachanot et aviv. Vayachantu harofim et Yisrael. Vayimalu lo 40 yom, ki kain yimalu yemei ha-chatnutim. Vayivku oto Mitzrayim 70 yom, vayavru yemei v'chichto. Vayidaber Yosef el beit Paro lemor. Im na matzati chen be'enechem, dabru na be'oznei Paro lemor. Avi hishbiani lemor, hine anochi met bekivri asher kariti li be'eretz Kanaan shama. Tikraveni, ve'ata elena ve'ekbara et avi ve'ashuva. Vayomer Paro, ale, ukvor et avicha ka'asher hishbiacha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher natan lanu Torah emet. V'chayei olam natan b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Yisher koach. We turn our thoughts and prayers now to those who are in need of healing, and so we turn in our Siddur to page 371 in the middle of the page. If you're watching through the blessing of technology, feel free to add the name of those whom you're thinking of who are in need of healing at this time, whether it's a healing of the body or a healing of the spirit. And I share with you these names of our extended Adith Emmanuel family, those who we're sending our blessings of healing to. Linda Drachman, Sandra Goldman, Chaim Ben David, Eileen Davison, Craig Davison, Hugh Morton, Art Bond, Roberta Levine, Cy Kliansky, Marlene Kaplan, Susan Hubble, Jordan Maverick Steinberg, Deanna Amariello, Lisa Galda, Brian Zabel, Ed Crosby, Jonathan Burr, Myra Kaplan, Jeff Schaefer, Lula Rivuela, Marion Gwertz, Aaron Tepper, Lily Tepper, Louis Alahut, Mary Parker, Tricia Tepper, Carol Schaefer, Mary Mednitsky, Jocelyn Jackson, Jen Jones, Shirley Friedlander, Michael Infanti, Gary Garnick, Ann Marsden, Rick Ulrich, Ileana Cohn, and others whom we are thinking of who are in need of healing. You can, if you're here in the sanctuary, mention those names aloud. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei HaCholim. Misha beirach avotenu, Mekor havracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishebeirach imotenu, Mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. And if we look now at the bottom of page 371, we see what is called Birkat HaGomel, a Thanksgiving blessing. So, Harriet, you might want to join where it says individual recites, and then the whole congregation will. That's it. And we respond, Amen. May the one who has bestowed goodness upon us continue to bestow every goodness upon us forever. Amen. You're welcome. As we are able now, we rise as we lift and dress Torah. And you will be able to see, we didn't read from the very end, which is why I didn't do the chazak v'nit chazek, but as we lift and dress Torah, you will see where the book of Genesis ends and where Exodus begins by that gap of 4 spaces. V'zot haTorah asher sa Moshe, v'zot haTorah, v'zot haTorah asher sa Moshe, v'zot haTorah, lifnei b'nei Yisrael, v'zot haTorah, al pi Adonai v'yah. As we turn now to our words of Haftarah for this week's Torah portion, our Haftarah reading for Vayechi is from the book of 1 Kings, and you can find it in your Chumash on page 359. We see here the parallel at the Vayechi. Jacob is dying, also Joseph dies in this Torah portion. We have the parallel of David's life drawing to a close. So, do you have the microphone? Oh, Sam will read it this morning. Great. And page 359 for the actual Haftarah. And if you would like to follow along with the blessings, they are on page 372. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nvi'im tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo u'v'nvi'ei ha'emet v'tzedek.
When David's life was drawing to a close, he instructed his son Solomon as follows: I am going the way of all the earth. Be strong and show yourself a man. Keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways and following his laws, his commandments, his rules, and his admonitions as recorded in the teachings of Moses, in order that you may succeed in whatever you undertake and wherever you turn. Then the Lord will fulfill the promise that he made concerning me. If your descendants are scrupulous in their conduct and walk before me faithfully with all their heart and soul, your line on the throne of Israel shall never end. Further, you know what Joab, son of Zeruiah, did to me, what he did to the two commanders of Israel's forces, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, son of Jether. He killed them, shedding blood of war in peacetime, staining the girdle of his loins and the sandal on his feet with blood of war. So act in accordance with your wisdom and see that his white hair does not go down to Sheol in peace. But deal generously with the sons of Barzillai, the Gileadite, for they befriended me when I fled from your brother Absalom. Let them be among those that eat at your table. You must also deal with Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjaminite from Bahurim. He insulted me outrageously when I was on my way to Mahanaim, but he came down to meet me at the Jordan, and I swore to him by the Lord, I will not put you to the sword. So do not let him go unpunished, for you are a wise man, and you will know how to deal with him, and send his gray hair down to Sheol in blood. So David slept with his fathers, and he was buried in the city of David. The length of David's reign over Israel was 40 years. He reigned 7 years in Hebron, and he reigned 33 years in Jerusalem. And Solomon sat upon the throne of his father David, and his rule was firmly established.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol haolamim tzadik bechol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'oseh hamdaber u'mkayem shekol devarav emet v'tzedek al ha'torah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al hanvi'im ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu likdusha v'limnucha lechavod ultifaret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach umvarchim otach yitbarach shimcha befi kol chai tamid leolam va'ed baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat.
So, knowing of many of today's Jewish laws and customs, it struck me as strange that in this week's Torah portion by Yechi, Joseph arranges for the embalming of his father Jacob when Jacob dies. So I will share with you the verses I read this morning, which pinpoint this part of the story. When Jacob finished his instructions to his sons, he drew his feet into the bed, and breathing his last, he was gathered to his kin. Joseph flung himself upon his father's face, wept over him, and kissed him. Then Joseph ordered the physicians in his service to embalm his father, and the physicians embalmed Israel. It required 40 days, for such is the full period of embalming. The Egyptians bewailed him 70 days. And when the wailing period was over, Joseph spoke to Pharaoh's court, saying, "Do me this favor and lay this appeal before Pharaoh. My father made me swear, saying, I am about to die. Be sure to bury me in the grave which I made ready for myself in the land of Canaan. Now, therefore, let me go up and bury my father, then I shall return." Pharaoh said, "Go up and bury your father as he made you promise on oath." Embalm. It seems strange to me knowing what I know of today and Judaism, so I decided this year to delve a little further. And the questions I started to ask myself was, well, what was embalming like back during the Torah times? And is that different than it is today? And after Jacob dies, why would Joseph Why? What's the reason for embalming? And then the third question, how does Judaism approach embalming today, and why? Also of note is this process took 40 days. And then there was another period of mourning, and 70, you add that 30 to the 40, there's 70 days. So that was a long time before Jacob even gets buried. And in Judaism, as many of us know it today, we try to get the deceased into that burial place as soon as possible. So Goldie, I saw your hand.
From what I understand of Egyptian embalming is, first of all, Joseph grew up in Egypt, so this is what he knows.
So,
the inner
so going to the why of it, Joseph grew up in Egypt. That's what he knows. He's dressing like an Egyptian, speaking like an Egyptian. He's adopted the Egyptian cultures, and so this would be something that he would do for his father.
The embalming at that time, from what I understand, is removing the innards and using lots of spices to kind of pickle the person for posterity.
So I'm just going to repeat that because that was also that. So what was the embalming process? One of the interpretations is that it involved, this is according to the Zikanim, who was a 12th, 13th century commentator from the French-German area, who said they made his bodily remains stench-proof, emptying the bowels, the stomach, and afterwards inserting various spices, as you mentioned, into the different openings so that the body would not decompose. So we have this idea of taking out those innards that might have decomposed, even though in our scientific minds today we know the whole body decomposes, but inserting those spices. Another says that it's about the spices, think of a dying body, right? It would smell and the odor would overpower. But if we have these spices that are sweet or savory or however they are, they're going to overpower the smell of the host body.
Cinnamon and cloves, things like that.
So I think, cinnamon and cloves is what you research, or is that what you're just thinking that comes to mind? Right, there's lots of spices in our, spice rack that we can think of that would have made it more pleasing odor. Okay? Ibn Ezra writes, they powdered his body with a preservative. And this was a way a body is embalmed that only Jacob was embalmed in this manner so that his body would be spared the desecration that the usual embalming procedure entails. Not sure what that regular procedure was, but it was a sprinkling as a preservation so that the actual embalming was maybe more invasive of the body, like we have that other interpretation where the innards are actually removed. And Rashi says it's just a matter of mixing spices. A second question I had is why? Okay, so we said, well, maybe to overpower the odor. Ha'emek Hadavar, which is a 19th century commentary that came from a yeshiva in Lithuania, says to embalm. Joseph was concerned lest his father's body begin to decompose during the unusually long mourning period that preceded his interment. So here we're seeing something that we don't think of today. These 70 days, that is unusually long. And according to the sages, God criticized Joseph for this, saying, do you think I'm unable to preserve my righteous ones? It was on account of this that Joseph died before all his other brothers, interestingly. So that Joseph is doing this because Joseph loses faith in God, that God wouldn't have this miraculous ability to preserve Jacob's body from decomposing over those 40, 30, 70 days. And so because of that, God punishes Joseph and says, you're going to die before the rest of your brothers. This is what Midrash does, right? They're digging in and they're trying to find explanations. So why? Maybe this Midrash is less about Jacob being embalmed by Joseph than answering the question, why does Joseph die before his other brothers, right? He was toward the young end of them, right? Right, well, that Benjamin was younger. Yeah, but he was toward the young end. And then Or HaChaim, 18th century commentary from Morocco, says, in response to the physicians embalmed Israel, Joseph initiated this procedure because of the honor due to his father. So where is Joseph in the stature of the Egyptian hierarchy? He is up high, and this is his father, and all men of honor, all men of stature were involved, especially those connected with royalty. So the embalming was something done as a gesture of honor for those of status. So that was also interesting to find out. And then I wanted to look at the situation of embalming from a modern perspective. How does Judaism approach embalming today, and why? One answer comes from a website called 18 Doors, which I especially like because 18 Doors is an organization that approaches answers for trying to give Jewish answers, but acknowledging that there are non-Jews in the family. And so I'm looking at this as this is Joseph. We talked a few weeks ago about acculturation versus assimilation. And so Jacob is this Jewish person, well, Israelite, living in a non-Jewish, non-Israelite community, adapting some things, keeping some things. So 18 Doors explains that embalming is the act of replacing all of the bodily fluids of a corpse with synthetic liquids that delay or arrest the body's decomposition. That's the modern, right? Embalming allows for, and this was also interesting, an open casket burial, which is not something we do in Judaism, and I'll address that in a moment, and the ability to put the body on display for a long period of time. These practices go against Jewish cultural ideas of modest treatment of the body. One reason for the Jewish tradition of quick burial is that without embalming, the body will begin to deteriorate, right? We are not trying to preserve the body, and we very quickly, because we know that's what happens. And think back in the day, we didn't have that refrigeration of a morgue or, a funeral home having refrigeration. And so we buried our loved ones as quickly as possible, not exposing them to the elements, to whether it's weather or animals, and that was showing kavod hamet, giving honor and dignity to the deceased. Another answer comes from my Jewish learning, and it says that there are instances in which embalming would be allowed in Judaism, such as where the body is being transported over a long distance or there's an unavoidable delay in burial. And it may also be permitted if it's required by civil authorities. What if you are in a place that you die, that's the law of, so to speak, the law of the land, and this is an explanation sometimes invoked to explain the embalming of Jacob back in the Torah, right? It was a long period of time, so he had to be embalmed, even though the methods of what we know embalming today differs from that ancient embalming. And so related, I just wanted to address this concept or thought of open casket, in part because of the embalming. Open caskets, and this also, some of this information comes from my Jewish learning, open caskets are also typically accompanied by some sort of cosmetic procedure for embalming to prevent the body's decay. Both these actions are considered inconsistent with the prohibition of desecrating a dead body, known in Hebrew as nivul hamet. So that would be a desecration as opposed to kavod hamet, giving honor and dignity to the deceased. This prohibition is derived from actually a later part of the Torah in Deuteronomy that prohibits leaving a body of an executed man overnight. The Talmud expounds on what qualifies as desecration of the dead to include post-mortem procedures that tamper with the body. Moreover, various philosophical and mystical objections have been lodged against the practice, among them the idea that a person's body is merely the container for their true self. And so our bodies are just the container of what? The soul. And that's really the essence of us. And in this view, placing a body on display so one can pay their respects to the body, it doesn't honor the deceased because we should really be paying respects to the soul. It merely objectifies the container in which the deceased personhood once resided, and the Jewish mystical tradition believes that the departure of a soul of the body is spiritually painful, and that anything that prolongs that process, such as embalming, would aggravate the soul's So all these different angles of the approach to embalming and what's permitted and what's not permitted, or how it's done, or how it's done then and how it's done today, I thought it's just really interesting. And so my thoughts are, or my questions to us for our discussion are, what are your thoughts about embalming for Jacob during those ancient times? And what are your thoughts about embalming today? So we'll start the feedback.
I'm first generation American, and when my bubby died, I was 13, and they did have the coffin open, and my mother was very upset about it, but she said, we are becoming too Americanized. And there was a period when I was younger where I did go to Jewish funerals and the coffins were open. I have found over the past maybe 30 years that we have become much more traditional. We are burying the body. We are not embalming. My father in a Jewish funeral home was embalmed. They told us that's what we were supposed to do. My sister I was 31 years old sitting there, and they said, you're supposed to embalm him. So we embalmed him. We didn't embalm my mother 20 years later. The one thing that you said, Rabbi, that was interesting, when I was in graduate school, in a death and dying class, I did a lot of research on Shiva and Jewish customs. And one of the things they said about the open coffin had to do with when you are alive, you have the right to say who can view you and who can visit you. And once you are dead, no one should make that decision who you want to visit you or view you. And that was another reason that they gave.
Exactly. So, right, part of Kavod Hamed, giving honor and dignity to the deceased, is to let the deceased decide, do I want my body to be viewed? I don't know what it looks like when I'm dead. And so to preserve that value of giving honor and dignity, and to a person who can't give you, yes, please, view my body, we close it as a matter of respect.
But I do think, and I mean, some of you are my age, that we've seen it change back to much more traditional. I have in my lifetime, and that was my mother's thought, that we become too Americanized when my puppy died. That's what she said.
Thank you. Other thoughts or experiences with embalming, about embalming, or other Jewish ritual practices, burial practices?
Well, I just wonder why, Jewish funeral homes offer that option, and they, is it financially incentive that they do that?
They charged us for the refrigeration, so it had nothing, but definitely they told us.
So right, so one of the questions was it a financial incentive to embalm, but the difference between embalming and refrigeration, you're still paying, so it's not, perhaps, who knows? Did I see a hand back here? Did you have a hand?
So I've never been to a Jewish funeral, but about a week ago I was at my friend's grandmother's funeral, and they were Catholic, and so afterward I was like looking up the differences because I know it's definitely different, and it was an open casket, so I was just reading the same article that you were talking about, which was funny. But I think it just depends cultural and where you're at, I guess.
Speak a little louder.
I guess it just depends culturally and where you're at, depending on the customs, but I don't know, I'd probably want a closed casket, personally.
It's hard to hear you.
I said, I guess it depends on the cultural
So it depends on the
aspects.
culture.
But personally, I'd probably want a closed casket, since, as you said, you don't really have the option to say anything.
Right, so the idea of closed casket comes from the respect for the person not being able to make the decision.
I thank you for your comments, because I never paid that much attention to this part of the parasha. But the more that you comment, and the comment in the Chumash is the 30 days added to the 40 days of embalmment were part of the Egyptian observance of a death. It was a prolonged business. And then they described the procession of important people from Israel that went back to Canaan with Joseph to bury his father. So they had Egyptians going back there in honor. So this becomes a very pompous affair. This is too much in the Egyptian tradition. Like we're becoming too Americanized. This is an Egyptian type of burial. When Joseph's bones go back to Israel, it's just the bones. There's no big deal. There's no preservation or anything else. So it's very un-Jewish and very Egyptian. And I'm beginning to see how the influence probably made a difference.
Reflective of the Egyptian culture, but also the status. The other thing I'm thinking of, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? She lied in state. That had to take an extra day to do, right? But because of her status, because of Jacob's status, because of Joseph's status, that was appropriate. Maybe, maybe not. And, but her casket was clearly closed. So, and Jews were asking the same thing. Why wasn't Ruth Bader Ginsburg, our Supreme Court Justice, buried more quickly? Maybe the family made that decision with some, and I actually was looking up some rabbinic texts that supported this idea that she lie in state.
You brought it up. The death of a person, for those who believe at that point in time, the soul is then released from its shell. So what you have left is, as you said, the shell of the person. But I think a lot of it depends on the family. I view the ceremony of burial more for the family than for the person who has passed. The issue of closure, the issue of honor, and so forth. It's the person, the soul has gone. It's really to provide an opportunity for the family. First of all, they get to make the decision as to what will happen with the remains. And they can opt for any of those. I mean, we even hear today of, depending on circumstances, of not burial, but of cremation. So
That's a devar Torah for another time. It's related, but
yeah.
for sure, cremation is another devar Torah.
So when we look at the service and everything that is going on in the service with the closed casket, with speeches that are given and so forth to praise the person who has passed, I think it's to fill those who remain with a sense of closure, a sense of understanding of what came before. But for the person itself, I don't believe it's of any value.
That becomes a nice segue to my thoughts about wrapping up our discussion today. The Jewish value, which we embrace most strongly around our rituals for death and burial and mourning, is called Kavod HaMet, giving honor and dignity to the deceased. And though it's for the person who has died, there's an expression that if we give Kavod HaMet, all the more so do we give Kavod HaChaim, we're giving honor and dignity to the deceased, all the more so do we give honor and dignity to the living. And so, in choosing any death and burial practices, what I want to first ask myself is this giving honor and dignity to the deceased? And then I ask myself, is it giving honor to the living? In all our deeds, may we give honor and dignity to those around us. Shabbat shalom. As we turn now in our Siddur to page 374, I believe, as we're able, we rise as we return the Torah to the earth. Page 374. Etzraim hi lemachzikim ba v'tomcheha meushar terai